evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the June 2nd meeting of the Temple Terrace City Council. I have a statement to read prior to us getting started. So Hillsborough County, as I'm sure everybody is aware, is currently under a state of local emergency due to the COVID-19 epidemic. Pursuant to Executive Order number 20-69 issued by Governor DeSantis on March 20th, having then been extended, municipalities may conduct meetings of their governing boards without having members physically present to compromise a quorum, or in any specific location by utilizing communications media technology such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Section 120.54, Section 5 of Florida statutes. Due to COVID-19, City Hall is still closed to the public, but provisions have been made to allow for public comment on any agenda items considered at tonight's meeting. All public comments made through the use of communications media technology will be afforded the same consideration as if the public comments were offered in person. Additionally, the city has not selected any virtual platform that requires the public to purchase or download any additional software or equipment to participate in this meeting. Remote access to view and/or participate in tonight's meeting is available through multiple technologies. The city has elected to provide public comment through the following options. The first is email. Members of the public may email a statement to be read into the record during the public comment section for any items listed on the agenda. Statements may be sent to public.comment@templeterrace.com or submitted at templeterrace.com/public comment form, all squished together into one, public comment form. All emails must include the participant's name and city of residence and should be of a length that can be read into the record within 3 minutes by designated city staff. That's option number one. Option number two is telephone. Persons wishing to provide public comment by phone for items listed on the agenda were invited to sign up to speak prior to the meeting and will be connected via conference call during the meeting. Option number three is remote public participation at City Hall. A remote viewing station with a public comment microphone is set up in the City Hall parking lot for citizens who wish to participate in this manner. It's on the west end of the building or out in front of the doors that people normally enter and exit from. When addressing the City Council, the speaker must first state his or her name and city of residence. Persons participating by phone shall not interrupt the meeting or other speakers and shall conduct themselves as if they were physically present at the meeting. Persons failing to do so are subject to being muted or disconnected. Any individual desiring to appear in person to provide comments from the city's remote access location outside of City Hall will be subject to screening for symptoms of COVID-19. The city will insist that the general public observe the CDC guidelines for social distancing. Any persons exhibiting any symptoms of COVID-19 will be directed to relocate away from others. So I now ask everybody to please stand and join us in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice Mayor Donahue.
Dear God, you have our attention. We pray to you in the many names we call you to help us to do the work our community wants and needs, to listen and to act accordingly, to keep our citizens and employees safe. And so we humbly ask, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow charity. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is error, truth. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. Grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is giving that we receive, and it is pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying to ourselves that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My colleagues, it's good to see everybody tonight.
Sort of.
Sort of, yeah, it's good to see everybody. So the first item on the agenda is recognitions and proclamations, and we have none. The second item is presentations, and again, we have none. The third item is board appointments, and we do have one item here. I'm getting signals from, okay. We do have one item here, and that is a Municipal Code Enforcement Board alternative member appointment. There is one vacancy on the Municipal Code Enforcement Board for an alternate member. The city received one application from Brandon Smith. Do we know if Brandon Smith is, Jeannie, is Brandon Smith outside with you at the remote viewing location? I don't think that he is. We have any correspondence or any contact from Brandon Smith? Does he desire to? Okay. If not, then I'll ask for a motion to approve the appointment of Brandon Smith.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No nays. Mr. Smith, if you're watching, welcome aboard and thank you for your service. Next item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes from the previous meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes?
Yes, I move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion or corrections of the minutes? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are passed. The next item on the agenda are persons wishing to be heard on items not listed on the agenda or items on the consent agenda. A 3-minute time limit will be imposed for all comments regardless of the 3 platforms we have. During public comment on items not on the agenda, the city manager and directors do make note of these items. And residents can be assured that all your comments are taken seriously and will be followed up on. Make sure that you've placed your name on the sign-in sheet outside. I guess that's at the remote viewing location. So, Mrs. Barlow, is anybody at the outside location to speak on items not on the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I have 3 people signed up to speak tonight for items not on the agenda. Our first speaker is Kelly Seeley, and she wishes to speak to city ordinance changing. Ms.
Very
Seeley?
good, thank you. And just before she begins to speak, I don't know if we can adjust the volume so that we can hear the speakers outside a little better, if that's possible.
They can't hear you. Speak loud, state your name and your city or residence.
Good. Can you hear me?
Okay. So Mrs. Seeley, whenever you're ready.
Ready? Are we good? Good evening. My name's Kelly Seeley, 401 Druid Hills Road. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Food insecurity is a public health concern because it affects a household's ability to afford nutrient-dense whole foods, which in turn influences both the physical and mental health of our residents. In order to assist the development of a just and sustainable food system that fosters equitable access to healthy food, we recommend that bees and the appropriate number of hens be allowed per single-family residential lot to include Temple Terrace Community Gardens. Unfortunately, as we have witnessed during the COVID-19 crisis, our grocery stores, along with our local farmers markets, have been unable to sustain our residents' whole foods needs. Eggs are one of the items that are in high demand and sell out quickly. This is entirely avoidable if we allow backyard hens. One hen lays approximately 4 eggs per week. Allowing the appropriate amount of hens per household will be one of the most direct and effective ways to achieve a viable food system accessible to all, regardless of household income. We support a robust local food system that includes the ethical and responsible raising of egg-laying hens and bees, By providing free-range eggs for our residents and fertilizer for our gardens, backyard hens contribute a healthy meal with their superior nutritional value versus conventional eggs. Bees provide critical pollination at a time of unprecedented decline and, of course, health-inducing local honey. The addition of hens and bees to more households will greatly reduce the health and financial burden on the residents of Temple Terrace. Community food security exists when all citizens obtain a safe, personally acceptable, nutrient-dense diet through a sustainable food system that maximizes healthy choices, community self-reliance, and equal access for everyone. We're all in this together. We're requesting Temple Terrace Code of Ordinances, Chapter 6, Animals, Article 1, Section 6-6 be amended as soon as possible to provide regulations for the humane and sanitary keeping of one backyard hen per 1,000 square feet of yard. Please refer to the City of Tampa Ordinance, Section 27-282.28 for additional guidance and verbiage. And we ask that all code violations involving the keeping of backyard hens and bees be placed on hold until the amended ordinance is in effect. We're also requesting that the current restrictions under Chapter 6 Animals, Article 1, Section 6-7 be revised to reflect the inspection and registration of beekeeping under Florida Statute Chapter 586 and Florida Administrative Code 5B-54. We know this has been brought up numerous times in the past, but never before has it been more pressing in light of everything we've been facing: COVID, riots, food shortages, the weakness of our infrastructure, and our basic constitutional rights. We think it's imperative that our elected representatives act swiftly for the sake of our community's health and well-being. We request a prompt response after you have had time to deliberate. I'm available for questions, and thank you for continuing to make this an amazing city. I also had left you with a dozen free-range organic eggs from Trailbale Farms and some raw local honey from P&B Honey for you to taste the difference for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Steele. Mrs. Barlow, we're ready for the next speaker. Madam Clerk, do you have the ability to set the 3-minute timer from your location? Okay.
Our next speaker is Travis Malloy, and he would like to speak to ordinance change for backyard chickens and bees. Mr. Malloy?
Thank you. Proceed, Mr. Malloy.
Hey, everybody. I kind of get wheeled out when chickens get talked about. Travis Malloy, 206 South Lockmore Avenue. I just wanted to back up everything Kelly Silly said about backyard chickens and bees. They're very important for food security, and they're really a no-brainer at this point. They're easy to take care of, minimal complaints. The cities around us are doing it without any trouble. The county is now. And the bee one specifically, they are allowed pending state inspection, and there's a state statute that says it overrules local ones. So that's kind of a good one to take off the books anyways. A lot of people who really want to follow every rule will be discouraged by that when they don't really have a reason to, but it would be good to update our rules on that. But I'm also available to discuss any chicken keeping issues. I've been doing it for several years, especially out at the farm with hundreds of chickens at this point. And it's a pretty good move for the city, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malloy. Mrs. Barlow, you may proceed with the next speaker.
Our last person signed up to speak is Sandra McCrae. She'd like to talk about bees and birds.
Welcome, Mrs. McCrae. You can proceed.
Thank you. I'm also here to support the birds and the bees, and I really want to encourage. I've been here before, about 5 years ago, trying to talk for this. It's really important that we can have our own food sources. As most of you know, we ran low on meat. Eggs are one of the best sources of protein. I'm also one of the captains for the St. Vincent de Paul pantry, and we have not been getting any meat for over 2 months. Nothing. We get lunch meat, we get bacon, and I'm proud of our Temple Terrace St. Vincent de Paul. We feed a lot of families. We have conjunction with all of our other churches here in Temple Terrace because they know we are fair and they know that we will give the food out. And having those eggs, you know, some people have very prolific hens. So if they have extra eggs, we will always take them at the pantry. Please let us have a reasonable number of hens.
Thank you, Mrs. McCray. Mrs. Barlow, is there anybody else at your location that wishes to speak?
Yes, I had one more sign up from Tara Ferguson, who'd like to talk about bees and chickens.
Welcome, Mrs. Ferguson. You're free
Hi,
to proceed.
guys. I'm Tara Ferguson, 403 Druid Hills Road. So, can we have bees and chickens, please? I love Temple Terrace. We have had amazing churches and community groups step up to make sure that our citizens are fed. I have a friend who's been giving me eggs because he's allowed to have them, and we've been able to distribute them to the different food pantries and to different residents. I actually had one resident say, "Oh my gosh, I haven't been able to get eggs for 3 weeks at the beginning of the epidemic." So can we have a reasonable number? I don't need 60 of them. We don't need roosters. But the bees, I can't keep enough flowers in my yard to pollinate what I, attract, but we don't have enough. I mean, even if you're talking to the groups that just want the natural bees coming in, we are always encouraged to plant butterfly weed or milkweed and butterfly plants and stuff like that. And we certainly can use the honey, So can we please have some bees and chickens? Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Ferguson. Mrs. Barlow, is there anybody else?
Would anybody else like to speak to the council? No, Mr. Mayor, we have nobody else who'd like to address the council tonight.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Barlow. Mr. Pauly, are there any people on the phone to talk about items not on the agenda?
No, sir, there are no people on the phone to talk about items not on the agenda.
Okay. And do we have any email correspondence?
We are not accepting email correspondence for items that are not on the agenda.
Okay. Very good. Well, thank you all very much for your passion for the city. So next item is communications and petitions. We have none. And the item after that is the consent agenda. I would like to pull item C for a question or two. Other than that, Mr. Stevenson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. By pulling item C, we've got 4 items on consent. Item 7A is a resolution approving the purchase of a 2020 Ford F1 pickup truck under the Florida Terrace Association contract FHA 19-VEH17, specification 120 from Duval Ford in the amount of $26,344 for the Leisure Services Park and Recreation Division. Payment of this purchase to be made out of account 001-1881-572.64-11. The budgeted funds for this total expenditure have been allocated in this year's current budget. Item 7B is a resolution approving the purchase of a 2020 Ford 350 crew cab dump bed truck under the Florida Sheriff's Association contract FSA 19-VEH17, specification number 7 from Duval Ford in the amount of $45,989 for Leisure Services and Parks and Recreation Division. Payment to be made from account 001-1896-572.64-12. The budgeted funds for this expenditure of $45,989 are allocated in the current year's budget. Item 7D is a resolution approving the purchase of new laptop computers in the amount of $15,100.50 from Vitechio to replace 2014 and older computers in our regular replacement program for the city. Payment for this is to be provided from funds in the account of 001-1121-513.64-23. The new equipment in this proposal includes 10 Dell Latitude 5500 laptop computers along with docking stations. All the hardware will be purchased from the Dell contractor and piggybacked off the state of Florida DMS VSCA participating addendum contract number 432-11500-WSCA-15-ACS. Funding for this purchase will be out of account, again, 1121-513.64-23. The total purchase amount of $15,100.50 is fully funded in this year's budget. Item 7E is a resolution approving the purchase of software renewal licensing with Microsoft Office 365, utilizing the piggyback contract through SHI International Corporation with pricing based on current Florida contract number 432-3000-15-02. Payment to be provided with funds from account 001-1121-513.34-28. This is also budgeted in this year's current budget. The fully installed Office applications include our normal applications of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Publisher Access, OneNote. Again, this is a renewal to our current software programs that the city is using. With that, Mr. Mayor, that is consent agenda other than the item 7C that was pulled for discussion.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Mrs. Barlow, is there anybody at your location who wishes to comment on the consent agenda?
There's no one present who wishes to address items on the consent agenda, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
thank you. Mr. Pauly?
No, sir, there are no callers wishing to address items on the consent agenda.
Very good, thank you. Mrs. Schoen?
There are no letters or emails.
Okay, very good, thank you. If the consent agenda is acceptable, then we'll entertain a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda.
Move to approve consent agenda items A, B, D, and E. Second.
Okay, this is a non-debatable motion, so all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No nays. Consent agenda is passed. Is now the appropriate time, Mr. Stevenson, to, I just had one question about C, and it may just be a language. Is now the,
Mr. Mayor, if I can read the resolution in, and then I guess you can open it for discussion.
okay, you want to read it, or can I just ask my question? It's up to you. Go ahead.
Well, we ought to read it into the record anyway.
Okay,
So a matter of formality.
okay.
7C that was pulled is a resolution of approving the purchase of a Genie TZ-50 DC towable man lift from United Rental, incorporated through Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing, in the amount of $41,613.25 for our Legion Services Department. There is money in the current allocation of budget for this year in account 001-1896-572.64-21.
Good, thank you. My question is on the backup material, and this may just be wording, it may just be a matter of wording, but in the discussion part, it says, we've researched local bid awards and obtained a quote from the vendor. My question was only, did we get 3 quotes, or did we look at somebody else's quotes? How many quotes did we get?
I don't know that answer. Mr. Langfeld is upstairs. If he can make it down here, he can answer that for us. I'm not quite sure how he
Okay.
bid this thing out.
All right, so you want to just pass this then, and then, or maybe you call him, or,
We can get him down here. He's upstairs.
okay.
So,
All right, so,
He is watching on TV, and hopefully he is on his way down, but I will try to get him.
But if
Okay.
he's taking our elevator, it may take him a minute.
I'm sorry?
If he's taking our elevator, it may take him a few
It
minutes.
could.
It's only insurance, it's the only way.
Well, it's slow, but it's not that.
It's quicker with nobody in the building.
Maybe quicker for
Here he comes.
There you go.
That was fast. That was very fast. Hello, Mr. Langfeld. Sorry to make you rush down here.
That's okay, I can only go as fast as the elevator.
Did you hear the,
That's what I said.
did you hear the question? It may
Yes, sir,
just
I
be
did.
wording.
The Sourcewell is a cooperative purchasing consortium, for lack of better terms, where they go out for bids nationwide for products and for lowest possible prices that municipalities such as ours can utilize their pricing strategies that they've worked out ahead of time. What we had done with this is we had looked at prices available through vendors outside of what Sourcewell was doing and compared the prices, and Sourcewell's prices were far better than any of the other vendor prices that we would be able to obtain if we just gone out for quotes, or we could have gone out to competitive bid for it because it exceeded the $25,000 threshold. But Sourcewell is an organization that essentially does that process for you, where they go out and they do the bid process and then establish price points for all sorts of products. This was reviewed by our finance department, say, would this be consistent with our purchasing procedures? Finance was in agreement that it was consistent with our purchasing procedures, and that's why we went with the Sourcewell pricing.
Okay, so do they only deal in certain things? Why don't we use them for everything?
They deal in lots of products. Some years ago, I was involved in signing the city up with several of these different pricing groups. And there's all sorts of products that are involved in them. We actually take part in some of them also. We already get pricing discounts when we go to purchase through Home Depot and some of these other organizations that, because we're with Temple Terrace and we're involved in these purchasing consortiums, we already get discounted pricing through lots of the vendors that we buy through just because of we're a municipality and we're a part of these purchasing organizations already.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
No?
Colleagues? Okay, thank you. Sorry again for
That's
making you
okay.
rush down from upstairs. Okay, if no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to move item C of the consent agenda, please.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No nays. Item C is passed. Next item on the agenda is public hearing. Ordinances and resolutions. The first item is a resolution to adopt SPR 20-03, final site plan for Harney Distribution Center involving folios number 038195-0000, 038207-0000, and part of 061363-0000. Senior Planner Gus Carpus will explain.
Okay.
Welcome, Mr. Carpus. You have the floor.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. So what you have before you, if I can get my, up there, it is the final site plan for the distribution center on Harney Road. The council will, okay. You'll recognize this property because we did an annexation, comp plan amendment, and a rezone. This is the final site plan. They're proposing a 633 square foot footprint warehouse on the site, and it's gonna also have some vehicle and truck parking and drainage improvements. Unfortunately, the site being so big, the site plan doesn't look good, so hopefully in your package you got something better. But again, it's 633,000 square foot footprint. The elevations, the maximum height for the majority of the building is going to be 90 feet, but they will have some parapets that go up to 100 feet. Making sure I got my notes correct. They have requested some waivers. They would like to build an 8-foot security fence around the property. We allow currently a 6-foot fence. They're also looking to put a 20-foot high screen wall to screen the compactor on the south side of the property, which exceeds 8 foot allowed. There's also going to be a waiver for a reduced mitigation fee. In return, there's going to be improvements and an extension of Davis Road. We do have some conditions attached to this. They need to make a one-time payment of $700,000 for the tree mitigation. They have to coordinate the off-site improvements to Davis Road with the city and the owners of the adjacent properties for the extension. They shall coordinate off-site improvements to Harney Road, which there are some, and the Davis Road extension with the Florida to FDOT, Hillsborough County, and the city. There are additional infrastructure improvements that they're going to be doing, and that they need to make sure that they get the proper permitting for that. I'm looking for that. Okay. And then transportation impact fee. They have to make sure that they give us a correct number and that it needs to be accepted by the city engineer or whoever at the city. I believe it's the city public works. We do recommend the council approve the resolution for the site plan subject to the conditions of approval and the waivers. And then if the council would add any other conditions, we would throw that on the resolution.
Very good. I see the petitioner or the applicant is here. Any additional comments you'd like to make?
We're open to questions.
Very good. So before we get to that, I'll ask Mrs. Barlow, is there anybody outside who wishes to address this item?
Mr. Mayor, there is no one present who wishes to address the council on this item.
Very good. Mr. Pauly?
Sir, we do not have anyone to address this matter. However, I do have several representatives from Kimley Horn, the engineering firm that is retained by the developer in this case, in the event the questions need to be answered by Kimley Horn representatives.
Okay. They don't have anything they want to say, but they're available for questions.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Mr. Schoen, is there any correspondence?
No correspondence.
Okay, so colleagues, we have both the senior planner, we have the applicant's representatives, and we have the engineering firm on the phone available. So if there are any questions, I'll open it up. Mr. Sichler, you're recognized.
Yes, I have two questions. One, why the 20-foot high fence, screen fence?
Just please state your name and who you're.
Paul Seafried, Seafried Industrial Properties. The reason for that wall is really at the back of the truck court. It's more of a sound buffer from adjacent neighbors.
Second question is, I thought the original annexation was for 81 or 82 acres. Where'd the extra 10 acres come from?
That is actually property, this whole site plan includes property that's outside of the city because they're doing the improvements to the roads and the right-of-way. So that's how it got up to 91.5 instead of the 82.
Was there any reason why we didn't annex that other area?
We couldn't because it would have created an enclave. So they have to have a way out. So that's why they didn't, along Harney there, they kept some property out. But since they're doing improvements on Harney, we have to include that in the site plan.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Other council member questions?
No?
Okay. Seeing none, if acceptable, I'll entertain a motion approving final site plan SPR 20-03 for the proposed Harney Distribution Center development located south off Harney Road, west of Highway 301, subject to the requested waivers.
I move to approve.
Second?
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No nays? Site plan is approved.
We're getting there.
The next item is a resolution approving irrigation funding agreement with the Temple Terrace Golf and Country Club. Mr. Stevenson, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We really got two different resolutions that we need to present to council this evening in reference to the irrigation system at the golf course. Over the past several months, conversations have ensued about the city joining up with the club in order to put in a new updated irrigation system, and certainly everybody has validated the need for that. The system's 70 years old, and the golf club can barely find parts, much less purchase them. The irrigation project actually consists of new water mains throughout the 18 fairways, distribution of new lateral feeds and new sprinkler heads, and a state-of-the-art control system. In an effort to assist the club with the project, the city is offering, through the attached agreement, specific contributions to the project, exclusively supporting the purchase of specific material items and equipment that is based on a schedule, a material that was actually provided by a consultant from the golf course. The maximum contribution supported under this agreement between the City of Temple Terrace and the Temple Terrace Golf and Country Club is not to exceed $383,156. The funds required to complete this project above this amount should be the responsibility of the club, whether being labor or material. The city is using its buying powers to make material contribution purchases and taking advantage of its tax-exempt status to buy material. Funding for the overall project is also subordinated with a grant from the Southwest Florida Water Management District and Hillsborough County through separate agreements, which are essentially tied to the overall funding for this project. The attached exhibit, we provided a breakdown of each entity's contribution to the project. The club shall act as a project manager of the project, and the city's contribution is a not-to-exceed amount. It is recommended the City Council approve a resolution authorizing this joint funding agreement for the installation of the new irrigation system and collaborative efforts for its installation between the city and the Golf and Country Club. Contributions towards this funding in the amount of $383,156 will be provided out of the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund through account 410-1922-33.63-32. That essentially, that is money that will come out of the enterprise fund that is rather rich and certainly, in my recommendation, can handle this expenditure. That is the agreement that is between Temple Terrace and the Country Club. If I can kind of give you a synopsis of how we ended up with that, there's a cooperative agreement under a separate resolution that incorporates the city and the Country Club as cooperators. I'll explain that one in a minute. But there is, in fact, a separate agreement that would resort to the balance of the funds that you see on the schedule. We have worked out surety with the Golf and Country Club so that these funds that we put into the project and the funds that are matched by the Golf and Country Club are in fact secure and will only be used for that. They will be going through membership donations through a mechanism that they've seen. I think I provided you a letter from the Country Club that we had crafted today that kind of explains their method of getting their contributions together, and certainly provide some surety to us that, in fact, their funds are available at the same time that ours are. One of the things that we've had in discussion, Mr. Schishler has been on this group that we've been talking with the club about. We have certainly indicated to them, and they have certainly agreed, that the city is not going to issue a purchase order at all until their funds, we know their funds are in place. And we won't write a PO or order any material until we're absolutely sure that that money is certainly in place. So we have some checks and balances to make sure that they put up what they've agreed to put up, as well as the money that we're fronting out of the Water and Sewer Fund. So That is an agreement that was drawn up. This kind of culminated out of the SwiftMud grant agreement, again, required the city of Temple Terrace to be a third party in that agreement. And in order to address some of the things that SwiftMud would not allow the city to put into their agreement, that is the purpose for this separate agreement between the city and the country club. It addresses things like liability, project management, distribution of funds, so on and so forth. So we think that we have a workable agreement. Again, I thank Mr. Schischler for his input, as well as Mr. Pogorlich and Mr. Affronti. Everybody has worked together over the last several months. It's been a difficult agreement to put together, because there's a lot of moving parts in it. But I think everybody up here can agree that this is something that council had given us direction to move forward on some months ago. I think we're there. I think that certainly the club can speak for themselves. Mr. Nertney is here as a representative from the club, but we do think that we've got a workable solution to this problem of being able to put a new irrigation system in a very needed golf course. So,
Colleagues, if you'll just hold your questions for a little bit, we've got a couple more steps to go through. I do see a representative from the Golf and Country Club here. Mr. Nertney, did you have anything to add? Would you like to comment, or are you just here for questions?
John Nertney, 200 Inverness Avenue. Just here for questions mainly, but I do want to echo thank you to Mr. Stevenson and the city attorney, the committee. 3 government agencies, 2 vendors, and the country club all had to agree on one thing, and I think we're there.
Thank you. Okay. Mrs. Barlow, are there any people wishing to comment on this item at your location?
No, Mr. Mayor, there's nobody out here who wishes to comment to this item at this time.
Good. Mr. Pauly?
No, sir, we have no one on the call to comment on this item.
Okay. Mr. Schoen?
Yes, Vice Mayor. We have one email from Mr. Jack Ritter of Willowwick Avenue in Temple Terrace. His statement is, want to know when the Temple Terrace Country Club, a private organization since the late 1950s, is going to finally stand on its own financially. The idea that we use taxpayers' money to prop up this private organization requires serious consideration. This handout, referred to as a grant, benefits a very small percentage of Temple Terrace residents. Note that not all members of the club live in Temple Terrace, and one of its board members actually lives in Pasco County. The non-residents do not pay property taxes in this city, yet reap the benefits of my tax dollars. Residents of this city, taxpayers, don't even get a price break on their guaranteed once per month ability to play golf. Non-resident outsiders afforded period golfing access without membership pay the same freight as Temple Terrace taxpayers. I don't wish the club any ill will, but certainly think that they, as a private organization, learn to finance their own way forward. Grand that in my almost 75 years of residence, that the irrigation system was initially put in the ground in the early 50s, memory serving me correctly, upgraded to the centerline transit pipe system in the 60s. 63 to 65, again based on my memory. I played golf on the course intermittently from 1960 to early 1965 while in the early stage of a military career. The watering system certainly improved the playability of the course and resulted in membership increase. The failure of the club not to have a monetary reserve / budget item for irrigation replacement and high dollar maintenance is a serious shortcoming. The club just knew that the city did not want to take over the club, so the club board figured out where the sweet spot for money was: city coffers. As such, the total cost of club membership was relative cheap, with occasional assessment to meet operating needs. Initiation fees were used to augment the operating budget, and the $500 bond fund used to guaranteed monthly dues / charges. was also used to support operations. My purpose here is to shed some light on the club and some serious mismanagement through the years. That's all we have.
That's all the correspondence. Okay, council members, any questions? Any party here? No questions. Okay, if there are no questions and if this is acceptable, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Rogers, I do have a couple of comments I'd like to make.
Mr. Chalor, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. I did speak to Mr. Stevenson today with some questions, and he was fast to respond. He spoke to folks at the country club. I think everybody up here has supported this project, and certainly acknowledge, whether you play golf or not, that the golf course is an asset to Temple Terrace. Mr. Stevenson did a good job of recapping where we are, but for folks listening or looking at us as the stewards of taxpayers' money, it's very clear on the golf course letterhead today that the golf course's commitment of the $305,000 that they are collecting will in fact be collected by June 30th of 2020, if that's correct, right? The city will not expend any money before that time. And also I was assured by Mr. Stevenson that all the city's money is not going to be spent all up front first. It will be spent in conjunction as we move along while the grant money is being spent and the country club. I know we do have a schedule that we're looking at for folks that are home listening. This isn't just something that was put together in a back room and said, let's move forward and get this done. There is a schedule as to who is paying what, and the folks at the country club have asked Mr. Stevenson that he certainly is welcome to review all invoices, payments that are made through this process, so it does remain balanced and the agreement moves forward as described and explained. Again, we do have a letter today from the club stating that all their money will be collected by June 30th, and therefore all parties' money will be in place as we go ahead and vote for this project to move forward. So I just want to make sure that that was on record, and I see representatives from the club shaking their head yes, and Mr. Stevenson's shaking yes, but for the couple of the folks that called, I just wanted to make sure that, we did vet this, we did ask questions, and I think all parties are at the table saying, we're ready to move forward and be transparent. So with that said, I am ready to move forward as well. I just wanted to make sure that that was clearly explained for, everybody tuning in. Thank you, sir.
Very good. Good point, Mr. Shore. Thank you. Any other comments? We have a motion and a second. If there are no other comments, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? No nays. The motion passes. Next is another resolution involving the same project, a resolution authorizing the execution of a cooperative funding agreement with the Southwest Florida Water Management District, the City of Temple Terrace, and the Temple Terrace Golf and Country Club. Yes, I was going to catch you there before you got away. Good call, Mr. Stevenson. Mr. Stevenson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute this cooperative funding agreement, again, between the Southwest Florida Water Management District, City of Temple Terrace, and the Temple Terrace Golf and Country Club. This is the second part of this funding for this project. Some time ago, the Golf and Country Club had secured a matching grant with the SWIPMUD, the Southwest Florida Water Management District, sometime back in the middle of 2019. In November, it was discovered in the district sort of changed gears a little bit with the funding agreement, in that they wanted the city to act as a third party in the agreement. We, the city, along with the Golf and Country Club, are listed as cooperators in the agreement as far as our title. The cooperators, at that point in time, around January, February, we met with the district, and certainly with the help of Mr. Schoen, this is like a 12th generation agreement that went back and forth. There was a lot of work put into this and a lot of vetting of this agreement. But under this cooperative funding agreement, it proposed the installation of the advanced irrigation system, a new main distribution system, high-efficiency sprinklers, satellite-controlled units, and weather-based control sensors. The district considered the benefits of water conservation to be achieved by this project, certainly as a worthwhile project, and desired to assist the cooperators in funding the project. The total funding offered by the district was $255,000 under a 50-50 grant matching grant. The agreement contains a funding schedule outlined as in Exhibit 1 as far as the contributions of all three parties. The city's contribution under this cooperative agreement is $142,500, along with the $383 that was mentioned under the other agreement between the city and the country club of $383,156. Certainly totals the total funding monies on the schedule that is attached to the Temple Terrace funding agreement between us and the country club. The matching grant is also controlled by a bunch of checks and balances that the city and the club have to work together in order to submit bills for contractors. And really at this point in time, I certainly recommend, obviously, that this additional funding be incorporated into this project. This is, again, a cooperative funding agreement of a 50-50 matching grant between the City of Temple Terrace Golf and Country Club, and the Southwest Water Management District. Again, our contributions for this matching funds for this cooperative funding agreement will come out of account 410-1922-533.63-32, which is our Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. The comments of Mr. Chalura certainly is well taken. It's kind of a nice situation for me to be in. I've been in the construction business for 40 years, and I feel like the bank this time. So we do have some control on releasing money and certainly buying materials. And certainly let it be known that the city is not paying for any labor. It is only material-based that we're buying. So with that, the cooperative funding agreement from SwiftMud also identifies that as just materials that we're purchasing. So it's our contribution. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I stand for questions. Again, Mr. Nertney is here. Certainly was part of putting this agreement together with the Southwest Water Management District.
Very good. Mr. Nertney, did you wish to comment, or are you just available for questions? Okay, very good. Mrs. Barlow, is there anybody outside who wishes to comment on this item?
No, sir. Nobody wishes to comment on this item from this location.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Pauly, anybody on the phone?
No, sir, we have no one on the call to comment on this item.
Okay, Ms. Shoshone, I know the previous correspondence kind of relates to this too. Is it necessary to reread that, or can we just refer to that?
We can just refer to that.
Okay, any additional correspondence?
Nothing else.
Okay, very good. Council members, any questions regarding this?
No, I just want to add to what Mr. Chalura said. We've been given quite a bit of information on this, and the way it's laid out and identified as to who's responsible for what, and the progress that how we will pay, it was really well laid out, because it's like you said, Mr. Chalura, it's not like we're just laying out all our money up front. So, but obviously the listening audience doesn't get to hear or see all that. So I appreciate you making those comments, because, you know, we're all saying yes immediately, but only because we've had volumes of paper to back up our vote, so thank you. I will eventually move to approve this one as well.
Okay, well, hold on, I'll come back to you for the
Okay.
motion then, but any other questions or comments? Mr. Sister?
I have a comment, but it's more or less on the project itself.
You have the floor.
I'd like to echo the comments that have been made by Mr. Nertney and Mr. Stevenson. This took many, many, many meetings since ever. This thing has been beat up and vetted and drawn and quartered and re-put back together, and it's probably the best deal that everybody can get to affect the repairs and so forth, and increase the longevity of the course. But it was a good collaborative effort between the club and the city.
Mr. Chambers, you have the floor.
Thank you. Again, I just want to echo, thank you to the city for all the hard work. The Golf and Country Club, thank you very much. To the SAC committee, thank you for all your work. There was a lot of moving parts in this agreement, and it's going to be a great benefit to our community. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Triller, anything? Very good. Mrs. Donahue, I promised you I'd come back to you, and I will. You have the floor.
Well, in that case, I'll deliver. I move to approve.
Second.
Any further council discussion? I just would like to echo the comments that have already been made. I'd like to thank the city manager and the city attorney, Mr. Sischler, our colleague, who worked very hard on this, as well as his counterparts on the Golf and Country Club, and Mr. Afrani. Also like to thank David Pogorlich, who's a citizen volunteer who's helped to work on this also. I know a lot of people have worked very hard and long on this and come up with what I think is a very good product, and thank you for explaining it to the public better than we had. So with that, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No nays? Motion passes. Let's dig some ditches. Next item on the agenda is a resolution approving amendments to the city charter per last year's referendum and directing it to be filed with the Secretary of State. City Attorney Pam Shoshone will explain.
This is basically a housekeeping matter, but there's a decision to also be made. And as I go through this, since Councilman Schizler was on the Charter Review Committee, if he remembers better than I do, I would certainly welcome him to correct me on any misstatement I make here. But Council had been very adamant that only 3 questions be sent to the voters. All 3 referendum questions had passed. We didn't have room in 3 questions to cover some little tiny things that were wrong in our charter and things that the committee wanted to change. There were a few typographical errors. There were a couple of things that were no longer legal under Florida law. And the committee wanted to make our charter gender neutral. So there were many places within the charter where it referred to he, and they wanted to change that to state he or she. This all could have been done probably a year ago after the election, or after the vote, but other more pressing matters seemed to take place, and correcting typographical errors kept getting pushed down to the next agenda. So this is although the will of the voters did make this law, and technically the 3 referendum questions are all part of our charter, one of the referendum questions did allow council by resolution to make these minor changes that were not substantive. And in you have 2 suggested resolutions, and I'll explain the difference between the 2 in a moment. So I'm essentially going to be asking you to just pick one. If there's other changes you'd like to make, though, this would be the time to talk about those and to make those changes. But in the suggested or in the proposed resolution, under paragraph number 2, it sets forth those specific changes that will be made. And there is a copy of the amended charter that, with the underlines and the strike-throughs that were included in your packet. As you see, the resolutions are the same except for one item. And that one item is in the one proposed resolution that has paragraph 2A through F, there is a subparagraph D there, and it says in section 6.02, and that's of the charter, we would be adding the words "or resolution" to allow resolution as an option of form and content for budget submittal to City Council. Now, this was discussed during the many Charter Review Committee meetings that took place, and our city clerk, Cheryl Mooney, who unfortunately isn't here this evening, she had pressed for this particular addition to our charter. Right now, our charter states that our budget submission would go by ordinance. The Florida statute does allow that it be by ordinance or resolution. It says the Florida statute, and I'm referring to section 166.241 sub 2, states that the budget must be adopted by ordinance or resolution unless otherwise specified in the respective municipality's charter. And our charter does specify that it be by ordinance. For something to go by ordinance, it requires that there be 2 readings, 2 hearings, and that it be published twice. One of the reasons why the city clerk was advocating that we have the choice of doing it by resolution is that it is less expensive for the city to publish one time and to do this with 1 reading. I understand, and I think everybody does, that to do it by ordinance provides for more public participation, more notice. However, with resolution being an option, we would be able to address this issue as we did well, we didn't do it that way last year, but it would have been nice to have had that last year. During hurricane season, it collided with our budget process, and we were suddenly faced with a deadline that was required by statute to complete our budget process, and we were running into the problem then of the newspaper suddenly not taking our ad because they were not publishing the same way they were without a hurricane coming down on us. And we were afraid that we were not going to be able to do those 2 publications and the 2 meetings in time to meet the deadlines required by statute. The question is, though, really one of semantics, and I don't know that I can really answer that. That's why I'm put this in 2 resolutions. Our referendum question 3 allowed council to make changes to things that were not substantive. But you were allowed to make changes to things that were obsolete. The Florida statute that allows us this choice of ordinance or resolution has been in existence, and I kept going back and going back, for at least the last 15 years. So the question would be, is just having the choice of only an ordinance, is that obsolete? So should there be a choice? Because this may be viewed by you as being something that is substantive, in which case you would not have the authority to make that change under what the voters chose under our referendum 3, chose to allow you to do, to make these non-substantive changes, although you are allowed to remove illegalities simply by resolution. So I'm opening this up to council to make that choice and either select the resolution that sends our changes that have been already approved, sends this on to be recorded, or make that particular change along with these other things that are typographical errors, gender neutral, removing illegalities, and we also have one that is correcting a cross-reference that the numbers were now incorrect.
Very good. I'm sure we have a lot of questions, but we've got to go to public comment. I've got a couple of steps first. So, is that it, Mr. Schoen? I didn't mean to cut you off. If I did.
Yes, I'm happy to answer any questions, though.
Okay. Well, we have some, I'm sure. Mrs. Barlow, is there any public comment from your location?
No, Mr. Mayor, nobody wishes to comment at this location.
Thank you. Mr. Pauly?
No, sir, we have no callers to comment on this item.
Very good. Mr. Schoen, do we have any correspondence on this?
I have no correspondence.
Okay. Council members, I know I have questions. I'm assuming some of you do too. Mr. Schisler, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Schoen, it's a little muddled. The issue, there's two sets of issues. One is the typographical and insignificant, just fixing and janitorial stuff. That was considered to be important, and it was lumped together because there's so many of them. There's probably 8 or 10 his/her, he/she. There's the typographical errors are grammatical, misplaced commas, that's it. But the one about the budget, that was discussed in quite extensive detail. And I personally fought to keep the ordinance methodology, if you will. It guaranteed two sets of eyes looking. It guaranteed, we had to look at it twice. We couldn't just do it by resolution in one meeting and be done with it. I realize it saves a little bit of money, but it guarantees transparency that, we have our budget meet, we have our budget hearing, and these are the questions, and then people get an extra 2 weeks to look at it and bring it back again. And that was not one that was to me, that's not a significant or an insignificant change. That is a significant change. Yes, we could go either way. We have chosen and had chosen to do it by ordinance. Complicates life for the administration because two sets of documents have to be filed. And a couple of years ago, we made a mistake and we didn't file one properly, and we had to have a third meeting to fix everything. So I am not in favor. And one other point to that is that there was pushback from the citizenry who were saying, well, wait a minute, then we could just do things willy-nilly without a lot of eyes on top of it. And that was the guarantee that I know I gave to people, that the insignificant items that get changed would be insignificant, he/she, not whether we're going to do budgets by resolution or budget by ordinance, which changes, to me, that changes the entire complexion of the way the budget is drafted. Well, not drafted, but how the budget is finally approved, and the public insight and public opportunity. I have no desire to put that in as a change, because that's a huge change. To me, that just changes the whole complexion of the budget cycle. So he and she errors and the ones where we were technically wrong by 2 years, and it really has to be one. That is, to me, what was covered by that, not the budget cycle. So sorry.
Mr. Chambers, you have the floor.
Yes, well, I served on the Charter Review Committee also, and unfortunately, I have a little different recollection. It's been 2.5 years ago. I do remember, first, the he and she stuff, we can change that. That's not important. But I thought our committee, the Charter Review Committee, talked a lot about adding resolution with the ordinance. However, I also thought when it was presented to council at the time, which we were not on, that council wanted to keep it as an ordinance. So that's my recollection. So that's where I thought it was. I thought our committee recommended adding resolution, but council didn't want that. But I'd have to go back and look at minutes to see that. But if we're making that motion or vote tonight, I'm good with just an ordinance.
Any other comments? Ms. Donahue, you have the floor.
I guess my question would be, is the change This change says by ordinance or resolution, meaning that depending on the item before us, we could make a choice. And in certain circumstances, like last time, we didn't have a choice. We had to go with an ordinance because we didn't have that as an opportunity to go with resolution. So I think that, do you think that's the reason the committee was so torn? Is that those unusual circumstances?
At least my recollection in the Charter Review Committee was that when you do the resolution, it's less requirements for the published notice in the paper and less meeting times. And it could be, I won't say easier, but a little quicker to get it done. But council at that time felt that, that by ordinance, it gives 2 public hearings, 2 notices. The committee thought, at least my recollection was the committee thought that having a resolution, you still had plenty of checks and balances to get it done with 1 reading and 1 advertisement.
Mrs. Donahue, you still have the floor. Are you finished?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd just remind the council members, we're really supposed to be at the question stage here. I'm not trying to override discussion, but we're supposed to be in the question stage here. Mr. Schistler, do you have something to?
Well, no, I mean,
I'm not trying to silence anybody.
No,
I just-
no.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember how the actual amendment read. And I would think that something as, maybe that's a discussion point, but.
I guess we have to have a motion and a second, then we can discuss.
That's correct, but I mean, a
Okay.
little,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, we're having
Gotcha.
on-point discussion,
Yeah.
so I'm not trying
Yeah.
to silence anybody.
I understand.
You're
I
not,
understand.
yeah.
Other questions?
No.
Okay. I have some comments, but they're just that, so I'm trying to, I already asked for public comment, so if acceptable, if somebody would make a motion, please, for one version, one of the resolutions, please designate which one, and then I'm sure we'll have some discussion after there's a motion. Mr. Schistler, you seem to...
I lost my.
Okay, well, I'll give you a minute. You seem to have the clearest thoughts on this, or,
Yeah.
well, I don't know about that, but I mean, clear thoughts on it.
Thank you.
I moved to, and I don't know which one it is because I can't.
It's
just
the
getting-
first of the 2 in the book, but I don't know how to differentiate between the 2 either. Is
Yeah.
there-
Option 1?
Well, describe option 1, Mr. Sean. Can you describe option 1 versus option 2?
How do we
In a
differentiate
nutshell.
between the 2 versions?
Oh, here it
The
I
is.
two-
would say, if we all can agree that option 1 would be adding the words "or resolution" to the charter, and option 2 would be not changing section 6.02 and leaving it just ordinance.
I moved to I moved that the council adopt option 2, to not change the budget cycle from an ordinance to a resolution,
Okay, we
but
have-
doing all the other janitorial changes that need to be made.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Do we have discussion? Mr. Chambers, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And I should have asked in questions, but I have a question of finance. Don't want to put you too much on the spot. Do you have an opinion? I'd like to hear that opinion.
Ms. Boswell? Once you get to the podium, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The only opinion that I have is there was concern that there would not be 2. I'm still required to hold 2 hearings, whether they're public hearings, whether it has to be done by ordinance. I'm still required to give the county 2 dates, and those are the 2 dates we must meet to talk about the budget. I just wanted to get that clarification to you.
Thank you.
Okay, and if, another question, and probably of Ms. Shoshone, if we have in our charter, ordinance or resolution, who makes that decision year after year? It's in our charter, but who makes the decision whether we do ordinance or resolution?
Can I jump in here for just a second before, and
Yes.
I'll yield the floor back to you, but
Sure.
this would be a good time for me to share my comments just for your consideration. As I understand this, because my initial gut reaction when I saw this was exactly the same as yours. This is overreaching what the referendum said. However, as I understand it, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I understand it. When our charter was originally drafted, state law required us to pass our budget by ordinance. Since that time, the state law has been revised and now gives cities the option of either going with ordinance, like it used to be, or resolution. I don't know that it's really overstepping because we could consider our charter language to be out of step with state law, because state law now allows us to do either one. Now, that being said, I agree with what Mr. Schister said about under normal circumstances, it's my opinion that we should continue to do it by ordinance, even though it's a little more cumbersome, it's a little more costly, it's a little less efficient, but it's a lot more transparent. And I agree completely. However, this is the part I want you to consider. If we had the option in the charter, we could still make it our edict, our rule, that under normal circumstances, we do it by ordinance. That's the council's directive to the administration. However, if we got a hurricane barreling down on us and a deadline looming like we did last time and we were unable to, we now have an option that we don't currently have. So I would only be in favor of passing the budget by resolution under some type of exigent or emergency circumstances, not as a matter of rule. I agree with what you say, the ordinance process is much more transparent. I agree. So that was my comment, and now, Mr. Chambers, I yield back to you.
Okay, so that was my point, that even though we could have the charter changed to indicate both ways, that as a council, as a body, we can, I guess, keep it as an ordinance. And I'm seeing that's a yes. Okay. So I guess my recommendation would be to go back to change the charter or adopt the charter with ordinance and resolution, which means do we have to vote this motion down?
Well, we can continue to have discussion on this motion until we exhaust that discussion, and then if Mr. Schister leaves the motion stand, then we would have to vote yes.
Okay.
Mr. Schister, you have the floor. Well, let me, if you may, can I check with the others first that haven't commented?
Yeah, my question is, if our finance director has said that she has to have 2 hearings, sounds to me like she has to have it whether it's by resolution or ordinance, but that in a case, like you said, in an emergency situation, this would just make things simpler for us to get the work done. But I do agree that as long as we understand that it's going before the citizens twice, then, and obviously it goes before them even more than that with all the budget meetings that we have. But I like the idea of having that insurance policy, if you will, of having an option only if you need it, because it sounds like we're still going to provide plenty of opportunities for the citizens to hear and see all the details.
Mr. Schuler, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I'm fine with the way it is. It's worked for 80 years, and why change it? So, the city's ran fine. We've had lots of hurricanes. This isn't a minor change. It does change things. So the other stuff, if you want to change the word from D to and I to me, or he or she, that's one thing. This is a little more significant than just a minor change. It's not a minor change. It's a substantial change, but that's my opinion. It's the first time something like this has come up to this degree, but that's my opinion. I'm good with the way it is. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Mr. Schister, you have the floor.
Yeah, my final comment on that is that this is exactly what the people who were opposed to the charter change said was going to happen. The first time that sooner or later, we were going to try to make some type of a huge change. My opinion, a budget change is a substantive change. I recognize, and I know we have 2 public hearings, but we don't have 2 votes. And there's things that, budgets are fluid, and things can be modified. But this is the first time out of the gate where this comes up. We're trying to make, what in my opinion is a substantive change. And it just plays right into the objections that the people who did object to it had. And this was their biggest one. This was their biggest complaint. We could move in and change anything we wanted with just, by resolution. Whereas this, changing something that's substantive should have been a separate line item for the voters to approve. They did it the last time. So I agree with Mr. Chor. It's worked well for many, many years now. And if we run out of time, the old budget just kicks in until the new budget takes over. So it's not like we shrivel up and the checkbook runs out of money or anything like that. I just think it's too much for what, it's way too much for what the intention of the charter review for that question was trying to accomplish. And I'll stop.
Okay. Do you have other comments? Very good. So just to recap, make sure I get this correct. The motion on the floor that has been seconded is to adopt the resolution that does not include the changes to the budget procedure. Okay? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion passes with Mr. Chambers and Vice Mayor Donahue voting no. Okay. I got so interested in that conversation, I lost my place. So the next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute and sign letters of agreement with agencies participating in the PEMT MCO. And we're going to get some explanation of that from Finance Director Lynn Boswell. Mrs. Boswell, you have the floor.
Mayor, council members, in January, the council approved the PEMT MCO program for the Medicaid fee-for-service program. And at that time, you allowed the city manager to go ahead and execute letters of agreements with AHCA. Since the program has been approved, now we need to sign agreements, letters of agreements with the agencies who will pay us. When you received your packet, or when the packet was put together, there were 4 agencies that were ready to pay us. Now there are 7, and this is simply a request to authorize the city manager to sign and execute those LOAs with agencies that participate in the PEMT MCO. What he will be signing is that they will pay us, that he's authorized to say, yes, go ahead and pay us what our share of that money. I stand for questions.
Well, hold on. Before we get to questions, because we do have questions, but before we do, Mrs. Barlow, is there any public comment on this item? I'm sorry, were you finished with your, okay. Mrs. Barlow, is there any public comment on this item?
No, Mr. Mayor, no one here wishes to make any comment on this item.
Very good. Mr. Pauly?
No, sir, no one on the call wishes to comment on this item.
Very good. Mr. Schoen, any correspondence?
No correspondence.
Very good. Colleagues, any questions for Finance Director Boswell? I do. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Schister.
Could you just, for the people who are listening, say what this is all about?
Well, yeah, that was kind of the question is, could you do that? And also, I remember this from January, but there's so many acronyms in here that it's difficult for me to piece it all together. The thing I was confused about when I read the backup material was, it looks to me like we're paying out $33,000 in order to get money back. I'm just confused by what this is. So why are we paying out money to get money back, and what's the PEMT and all? Please tell the public what this is.
This.
Or the fire chief
Yes,
can,
or the fire chief.
whichever of you, or the city manager, whoever's best prepared to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief if he can address this.
Whoever's best
He probably
equipped.
knows the most about this program than I.
Right.
So
Well, we're not sure who to address it to, so whoever can answer
Wait.
the best.
we have always struggled with why are we paying money to get money?
Yeah,
And,
It's that, okay.
and certainly the chief can explain the
okay,
program. So.
very good. Chief Kemp,
Chief.
can you clarify for us, please?
I can try.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have to throw the finance director out of the podium there, though.
Yeah, so, in a nutshell, obviously, we pay, the people we transport that are covered by Medicare, or Medicaid, rather. We do not recoup all the monies from them. We only recoup about 25%. About three years ago, we came up, actually it was Florida fire chiefs in lobbied at the state level. And that's where we initially started receiving monies from the state. And that's the current PEMP fee-for-service program. And basically, that requires the providers to submit a Medicaid cost report on an annual basis, which the finance director does. Providers receive a Medicaid supplemental payment on the difference between a Medicaid cost compared to the Medicaid payments received. And then there's a supplemental payment that is received back from the state share. That still did not come up anywhere close to 100% of the money that cities were paying. This is only reimbursed to governmental agencies that provide transport, and we happen to be. If you're a private ambulance, you do not receive this. So subsequent to this, the group, including the Florida fire chiefs, got together and said we would like to get more monies. And then that's when they decided to discuss it with the federal government and receive those monies from the federal government. So what the managed care part is now what we're talking about, and it includes a fund and transfer from state share through it's called an IGT, which is an intergovernmental transfer. So basically, in order to pay those monies that the state has invested, we have to come up with that money prior to getting the money from the federal government. I'm not an expert in this, and it's somewhat convoluted. We even had our representative from the state do a conference call with us, the city manager and myself, and if you don't do that governmental transfer, you'll still receive the monies from the state, but you won't get those supplemental monies from the government from the transfer of a patient, transport of a patient that has a Medicaid. This doesn't have anything to do with Medicare. It's just Medicaid. So this is something that the federal government sets up, and I'm not exactly sure why it has to be done, but that's what the IGT means, and it's an intergovernmental transfer of monies. So somebody, and maybe Lynn can explain that part a little bit better, but really it's a great program for all cities that do transport. We historically would only get about 25% of the monies. It used to be around 40-50%, but as transport fees and costs of fire departments rose, the reimbursement from the state and the federal level never kept up. So now it was only about a 25% cost. We would charge $100 in Medicare. Once we sent it to Medicare, they'd give us $25 back, as opposed to your private insurance, or if you're self-pay. So now we're getting much more by both of those services. This new one's going to give us more, but unfortunately we have to provide an intergovernmental transfer. I'm sure that didn't make a lot of sense, but that's the best I can give you.
Okay, so, again, whoever can answer, jump in. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I will be. I'm trying to clarify this. If we're confused, I can only imagine people watching that haven't read the backup material are even more confused. So the city has to pay to the State Agency for Healthcare Administration $33,000 and change. Where does that money come from? Is that money that we've been paid by Medicaid that we then have to forfeit? I mean, where does that money come
It
from?
just comes from your general budget.
That's just our money.
That's correct.
Okay, so.
Our money.
Okay, so we pay city's money, $33,000 to participate in this program. And by paying that in, is that like, kind of like insurance premiums that now we're part of a plan that pays us back more money? Okay, where's that more money come from? Medicare, Medicaid?
That's correct. It's trying to, it's reimbursing you for a larger portion of your transport cost. It's still never going to give us 100%, but it's the federal government say, okay, we understand basically that you are, your costs are getting more exorbitant every year. It's kind of an unfunded liability for cities, and we finally are stepping up to the plate and reimbursing more of that money back.
Okay, that kind of makes some sense, but then I'm still left wondering, what's the purpose of the $33,000? What does the healthcare administration do with our $33,000 if they're just a pass-through for federal money?
My understanding is it's just a policy that they have, and for whatever reason.
But if they're just passing through federal Medicaid money, why are they taking $33,000 from us?
Lynn, can you answer that?
I'm sorry, I know you have questions too, but I'm.
In this particular example, we are paying the state and the state are paying the feds. The feds just agreed to go ahead and do a reimbursement back. And this is why this has precipitated the smaller LOAs. They use that as leverage. Okay, do we have buy-in? If we have buy-in and we have enough of the participating agencies, it'll then just leverage the money better for the federal agencies to go ahead and reimburse. When they do a reimbursement or the allocation back to the city, they're going to allocate through who we actually bill through. So for example, in your packet, I believe you already have the 4, and then since then I've already received 3 more. So these are the agencies that we've actually done services with, we've billed Medicaid for, and they're the ones who are responsible for getting back their portion after we have already billed them. So we have to send them a report. This is based on a formula among the entities in the state.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I've reached the point where it's clear to me that I'm never going to understand this. So are there other questions?
Well, I think my only question would be, what do you recommend?
I recommend that you approve the resolution to allow our city manager to execute these LOAs so we can get that $33,000 back on top of the $50,000 as well.
Okay, that's what I needed to know.
That was my question. How much is the total for everything that we're going to get back in theory?
$85,743.30.
Okay.
So we have to give up 33, we get the 33 back, plus another $52,706.
Mr. Stevenson, you have the floor.
I was going to ask that same question, but thank you for asking that question. That kind of clarifies. The $33,000 is a buy into the program, certainly with some surety that you're going to get more money back than the $33,000. It's almost as an investment. You're now recouping a lot more money in the long run. I know it's probably clear as mud. It was clear as mud to me when I started talking to these 2 folks about this. So I do think the recommendation is to move forward with this. Ms. Boswell has given me 7 contracts to sign with 7 different companies. So I'm fairly comfortable in saying to council that this will not be something that we lose money on. I'm pretty comfortable that we'll be making a lot more money. So.
Yeah, I'm 100% confident. I've vetted this through the Florida Fire Chiefs, and I wish I understood it a little bit better than I do, and I apologize for that. But I think probably one of the big definitions that that somebody understands what an intergovernmental transfer is. But we will be receiving $85,743 that we charged to Medicare that we never received, and we never received this in the past. So this is on top of the other program that we use that we're doing every year. So we're roughly getting, because of this effort by different organizations, over $100,000 into the city that we never received before.
I just got to say that if one of my clients told me that they got an email proposing to do this, if somebody, you send me $33,000 and I'll send you, my next call would be to the FBI from some Nicaraguan uncle or something, I don't know what. So, all right, so.
We can assure you this is not a Ponzi scheme.
I think, folks, that we're just going to have to trust that Ms. Boswell understands this hopefully better than we do.
Move to adopt.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no sign? Motion passes. So the next item on the agenda, item F, is a resolution approving the purchase of a fire safety education house. Fire Chief Kemp will explain.
Yes, I can do a little better with this one. The fire department has been utilizing Plant City's fire safety house for over 15 years. During these times, we've had many instances where we were unable to use it during open house or other events. Our fire safety house will be utilized during our open house, during River Hills annual station visit, as well as other numerous events and visits throughout the year. We have budgeted and currently have budgeted $75,000 in an identified budget line for this fire safety house. Educating our children is the main objective for adding this safety education house to our department. The objective is teaching our youngest residents a myriad of fire safety initiatives, including but not limited to devising a plan if you have a fire or smoke in your home, smoke detection, identification, and battery replacement, kitchen and cooking fire safety, space heater placement and safety, match and lighter safety, as well as how to utilize the emergency 911 system and how to stop, drop, and roll if the need ever arises. It is our recommendation that the City Council adopt a resolution approving the purchase of this fire safety education house. And I stand for any questions. This approval also lines in with the fire department's strategic connections, which supports the city's strategic goal number 6, ensuring the fire department maintains the necessary equipment to meet the agency's current and future goals.
Very good, Chief. If you'd give us an opportunity to go to public comment before questions,
Yes,
please.
sir.
Mrs. Barlow, is there anybody that wishes to speak to this item?
No, sir, no one wishes to speak from this location.
Thank you. Mr. Pauly?
No, sir, we have no one on the call to speak on this item.
Very good. Mr. Schoen, do we have any correspondence?
Nothing on this item.
Very good. Council members, do we have questions of Chief Kemp? Seeing no questions, if acceptable, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay sign? No nays? Motion passes. I'm anxious to see this, Chief.
Thank you, it's going to be nice.
Be ready for October.
As soon as we get it, we'll be ready for anything. Yes, sir.
Very good. Council business. First item is discussion regarding the city's recycling program. Mr. Stevenson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is really an item that should have been under new business, but if you'd like me to move forward with it under council business, I will do that.
Well, I was wondering why they were under council business. So before we do both of these items should probably be under council business, isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's hold off there for a second. Council members, is there any leftover carryover council business from previous meetings?
No.
Anything we need to discuss about the COVID-19 stuff or anything like that? Okay. All right. If not, then we'll move on to new business, and now we'll talk about the recycling. Mr. Stevenson, you have the floor back.
All right, thank you, sir. Obviously, recycle is one of those services that has been dramatically affected because of COVID. I think everyone is understanding the potential contamination source that we've always talked about with collecting recycles. For that reason, some time ago, the recycle program was suspended, and residents were asked to just put recycle into their normal garbage that is taking and incinerated at the waste-to-energy plant on Falkenberg. In order to start, it appears as if, and again, I'm pleased to announce that it appears as if we're starting to come out of this COVID situation to some degree. Certainly, the governor has started to relax some of the requirements that were imposed as far as safer at home, and certainly some of the facilities that we had closed down. And as we start opening some of our facilities back up in conjunction with the governor's reopening plan, recycle is one of those things that Mr. LeBlanc and I have been talking about and trying to reestablish it, and at the same time not get into a situation that we're putting our sanitation workers in harm's way. We have kind of established something here again, and it's just something that I am not looking for a vote on this tonight. This is just for discussion purposes. But what we have come up with is basically a 3-stage process to reestablish full restoration of our recycle program. And if I may just kind of explain the stages just real quick. This is on the memorandum that I wrote to council today. So stage 1, really, it has been determined, and I've heard this from 2 different sources, one being CDC, that it's been determined that the COVID virus doesn't sustain itself on paper and cardboard. Now, I heard that in 2 different locations. So in order to begin a reestablishment of the recycle program, our suggestion moving forward here is to resume collection of paper products only in the green bins that are provided, and do regular recycle pickup as we normally did in our areas of town, and start that routine back up again with, again, recycling paper only. The plastic and glass and cans certainly is one of those things that we are still somewhat concerned about as far as our sanitation workers. Again, I think council and certainly the public understand that when our sanitation workers pick up a green bin, there's certainly an enormous amount of potential for them being contaminated, because we actually separate these materials. We do not single source these materials. And our trucks are certainly established to put glass in one bin and paper in another, and plastic in another. So there is direct contact with this material that we're collecting for recycle. In order to comfort every sanitation worker out there that picks up this recycle, what we're going to propose under stage 1 is for our sanitation crew to establish strategically placed dumpsters and ask the general public to help us with plastic and glass for the time being. And we can certainly do that in such locations as 113th Street parking lot. We can put one down in on the south side of town, and Boy Scout parking lot, certainly, and kind of strategically locate these things. And as they get filled up, we take it mechanically. There is no handling of it by our sanitation workers, and then we take it to recycle and where it needs to get distributed. That would be, and again, this is it's just a suggestion. We do have individuals in town that have expressed their desire to just put it in their garbage, and I can assure you that it does get recycled. Even glass at the incinerator, it gets incinerated. The aggregate is then collected and shipped off for recycle. So we're comfortable that however we collect this and however it gets to either our recycle facility or the incinerator with garbage, we're confident that to a certain degree that in fact it does get recycled. It doesn't end up in the landfill. We've been guaranteed of that. So the collection, stage 2, again, is as potential for infection continues to decrease, and we move into a stage 2, would be comprised of collecting paper products, and then again, we're looking at bagging bottles and plastic in our green bins so that our sanitation workers can pick them up without handling things individually. That would make things a little bit easier. I will tell you this, that we have some reservation with doing this, and recycle places and garbage places hate bagged goods because of the bag. They can't recycle the bag, such as the movement that people are trying to get away from plastic bags at the grocery store and go to paper bags or carry out recycle bags. Plastic bags do pose a problem for us in trying to do this, but it will also eliminate the contact of our guys into dumping these bins with plastic and glass. And then really the third stage is really moving into a full restoration when we're comfortable that either COVID has been eliminated or there's a vaccine available so that our workers don't have the potential for infection. So I kind of listed six locations. I will tell you this, there are a lot of cities and a lot of recycle places that are no longer accepting glass. Glass is no longer a commodity. It's too expensive. It's too heavy to recycle. It is end up being basically incinerated and then carried out that way. There are, Zephyr Hills just started a program. They're no longer collecting glass for one reason, that it shatters, obviously, and it contaminates everything, but also difficult to get rid of. Plastic still seems to be a good commodity for these recycle people. Certainly the cardboard and paper certainly is a good commodity for recycle. So we may end up coming back to council because of the change in the market with something that suggests we don't collect glass. So right now, I think that we're prepared to do that, and again, in stage 1, with the help of the community, strategically locating some dumpsters so that we can do this and handle this material mechanically. So I'll stop there.
I have some questions. I'm still, and I'm trying not to sound facetious on this, but I'm trying to figure out why recycling material that's put out for recycling is so dangerous, and then garbage is not. And they're picking up household garbage, but we're too afraid of the COVID to pick up recycling. I don't understand what makes one so dangerous. We opened up our gym. We have people in there working out with weights. Why is picking up recycling such a health hazard?
Well, recycling, here's a problem with recycled material. If you think about a bottle and the life of a bottle, where somebody is now picking this thing up, they're opening it up, they're also drinking out of it, they're putting their mouth on it. People don't put their mouth on garbage. The garbage ends up in the bins, and they dump it out of a container. The recycle is one of those things that is handled by hand. I mean, the guys will take this green bin, and we'll actually sort it at the truck. They'll take the plastic and put it in this bin. They'll take the glass and put it in this bin.
Well, why can't we just give people more bins and make them sort it more so that they can just dump the bins in the truck like they do the garbage?
That would be an option, I guess we can certainly pursue.
And I hear what you're saying about...
I'm looking for just some ideas. I mean,
Okay,
there
well,
are...
I hear what you're saying with the glass, because I've done some research, and you're right. A lot of places they've dropped glass completely because there's no market for it. You're right. I come across the same thing. But I don't understand what makes recycled materials so dangerous. They're picking up, I mean, some household garbage is nasty.
Yeah.
Why is plastic bottles...
Well, the garbage is in a container, and they dump the whole container.
Okay.
We don't pick the garbage out of the garbage can and put some of it over here and some of it over here on the back end of a truck.
Well, that makes
it just
sense.
goes in at one time. Again, the recycle is a hands-on kind of operation. That's the operation that we have. We are not automated. We're not semi-automated, which is certainly something that we're trying to put together and have discussion in this year's budget in order to move to something that's semi-automated, okay? Again, to eliminate potential contamination sources. And
Okay. Well,
our system right now just doesn't allow
all right. Well,
that mechanized collection.
The only other comment I have, and kind of a question comment, is that when we initially suspended recycling and yard waste due to COVID-19, I was told that it was because of our reduced staffing levels, and that's the message
Well-
that, well, let me finish, and then I'll let you respond. And that's the message that I communicated to my colleagues on the council, and that's the message that I publicly communicated to the community and asked for their support because we were with reduced staffing. And I said, please be patient. It was it was a difficult decision, but it was necessary because we're on reduced staffing. We're trying to reduce truck trips. And that was what I told the city. And I had no idea that we were going to use this opportunity to totally rebuild the recycle. I had no idea that this is what I'm not sure if I would have supported it or not, or at least not publicly. I didn't know that we were going to, I mean, I assumed it was talked about that once the crews all came back to work, that everything was going to kind of go back to the way it was. And so it's certainly within your purview as the city manager. There's no question about that. This is an administrative decision, and you're certainly within your wheelhouse to make the decision without the council. But I am a little befuddled that this was not the reason that this program was suspended to begin with. So, well, I promised Mr. Stevens could respond, and then you would be next. Mr. Stevens, you have the floor.
Your comments to the community certainly were vital in us addressing COVID-19 when this thing first started. And again, that is true. We actually took everybody to 24 hours a week. Some people were working 32 hours a week, and there was a lack of not personnel, but a staggered schedule or a reduced schedule so that people wouldn't be exposed at least as possible. That is what we conveyed. As COVID started coming up and we started listening to the EPG and the doctors and all the experts, we started finding out how contaminated this and what the potential is for contamination out of the COVID. So we are back to normal hours, but we have still suspended recycle from the standpoint of our attitude has shifted a little bit, and now that we're back to regular garbage, we can now pick up regular crews, we can pick up, again, a portion of the recycle, but we still have to address the potential for contamination. I mean, we've spoken with sanitation guys, they're a little worried, okay? I mean, they're coming to work, and they're looking for some answers, but.
Okay, Mr. Schistler.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ross. I kind of agree with you on the we thought it was because of the hours and the cutback, but I also assumed, and I hope I'm not wrong on this, but I assumed that as the city does with all the operations and so forth, that we were looking for improved efficiencies and improved just methodology. And it gives us a chance to step back and say, is there a better way to do this? That was my assumption, and I'm hoping that's right. And it looks like with the research being done as to whether glass is still going to be accepted and what's going to be the future of the bottles versus paper, whatever, I would agree with that. Any idea as to what kind of time schedule you'd be looking at? That's one question, and I don't know is a good enough answer. But the second one is, it's very difficult to communicate things sometimes to our citizenry. We don't have a whole lot. We don't have a news station that we can do public service announcements on that people are going to see. So maybe we need to, when we roll this out, when you finally decide on how you want to do it, I think your approach here is sound. I think what you're trying to do is going to bring everybody back online in a systematic, cohesive way. But just curious as to what type of, Ms. Lori, communication options are available to your staff, that everybody can get the word, in some kind of a uniform method or semblance. That's all. That would be my caution. But no, I think this is going to be workable, and I think it improves efficiency, and I think that's what will end up being the big takeaway from this.
I hear what you say, and I think that everybody will approach this from a standpoint of, we need to get this out there and get the word out again efficiently to the community.
I don't have a suggestion on that.
You know, we struggle with that with everything we do.
Yes.
You know, we put a notice out there, there's a hurricane coming, and people call us and say, why didn't you tell us?
Mr. Chambers, you have the floor.
We really try to put it out there as much as we can, and I understand what you're saying. Yes, sir.
I think I have a little different opinion of you guys. We did stop recycling because of COVID. Everything shut down for a period of a couple weeks till everybody got a handle on COVID, and now we're opening everything slowly. Our city facilities are not open full bore. Our employees are wearing masks. So we can roll recycling in slowly because it's still a hazard, and we're trying to limit exposure to our staff. And whether you pick the items out of the green bins or just touch the green bins, the more items you touch in a day, the more chance you have of getting exposed. And my question to somebody, I don't know if it's Chief Kemp, just want to give you a heads up, or somebody, if one of our sanitation workers is exposed, what protocols, do we lose everybody on staff? Do they all have to be quarantined? How many would we possibly lose? And if that happened, what's the alternative? Oh, hi.
Address that? You want to? I mean, you know, again, we have protocol when someone shows symptoms of COVID. We actually asked them to quarantine themselves for 14 days. I think it's been kicked back to 10 days, if I'm not mistaken. But we certainly have everybody else watched. Okay, we would not lose a whole crew. Okay, unless that person is then sent to be tested. The tests are available now to anyone for no charge. If they show positive, then there's some investigation that's done and certainly followed up by the fire chief that anybody that they've been in contact with is now suspect. Okay, they would be sent for testing. So.
Okay, thank you. I do have one other thing.
You still have the floor, sir.
Thank you. If and when you roll out the program you just presented, one of the things I can see, again, Mr. Councilmember Schussler was very on target about publicizing all this. So we need to get the word out. One of my bigger fears is in stage one, where we're going to collect paper only in the recycle bin, is that someone puts in bottles and aluminum cans, and then what happens? Your guys don't pick it up, it gets tagged, and the word's not out. Or somebody doesn't know we started the program, they see the recycle bin across the street, so they, hey, it's cool, we've started it, and they put the wrong stuff out. So how to address the wrong items in the recycle bin in stage one? So just a suggestion, get the word out every way we can.
You want to address it?
Yeah, that would unfortunately be a start over of what we worked hard for a lot of years. We'd have to come up with a, alternative tagging system, and then, have people with stuff left at the curb. The ultimate suggestion is to just put your paper out for now. The program is designed over many years where this is your day, this is what you put out. So the re-entry back in, like everything else, nothing's different except you usually put out your 2 bins with different stuff. Just leave one behind and go from there. And we can develop and see where we have reduced risk for
infection or contamination to the workers, the paper is pretty much off the table as far as the risk right now, all the paper products and stuff like that. We'd have to come up with, and we don't want the guys at the curb doing this and never getting done and leaving stuff behind. Our goal is to run it clean, and to run it clean would be to minimize any changes we make now. I want to back up to your question. I can't answer from a medical standpoint, but you said if one person gets infected. I know of a group that I used to work with in Atlanta, and there was 14 different collectors or 15. One guy got infected. They all worked out of the same hub, so they all quarantined. That's not a medical answer, but that's probably what would have to happen here, because they work, so tight. And they think it's from recycle, but they don't know yet. But they trace it backwards.
If I can add to that, and again, I share everyone's concern, obviously, with putting out notice and putting out adequate notice, and certainly, we're not going to roll this thing out during any stages and penalize anybody. We will try to educate as much as we can. Certainly, we will try to do our best to make sure that we don't have garbage sitting on the curb. I think everybody understands. If you put it to curb in Temple Terrace, it's gone. So we have backtracked a little bit with some of the growing pains that we had here recently. But I think putting out adequate notice is one of those things that whatever we do needs to be done. It needs to be done adequately throughout. Certainly, there are no consequences for somebody that wants to continue putting glass in their garbage. I mean, if we have some people that don't care to recycle anything. I mean, and they've shared that with us, going, "Well, why are you guys even thinking about doing recycle again? Put it in the garbage." So that is certainly still an option, and nobody will get penalized for doing that.
I mean, the residents are very cooperative with the way they put their bins out now. We spent about 18 months, 20 months putting out a lot of tags to put this here and put this here. So I think the right thing would do is just put this here and don't put this out yet. That would be the simplest thing, because we've already spent the last 20 months with new staff rehearsing that.
Well, Ray, if the residents are so cooperative, why can't you give them enough bins and tell them to separate this stuff and just leave it like it is?
Well, they can do that, but the thing is that I call it the commingled, the bottles and cans, they're still high risk.
Not if you pick up the bin and dump them in the truck.
Well, this is the hopper of the truck. It's about right to my stomach here. So if you could imagine about 1,050 bins a day, the guy's gonna grab it, he's gonna dump it. It's loose. The garbage is nasty, but a lot of that is bagged, they're tied up. So you take 1,050 bins a day, and roughly, and you dump them in there, and then they pile up to here, then you dump it here. It creates a lot of air, creates a lot of stuff coming off there. I mean, it's from a safety standpoint to me.
So is it the number of bins that's the problem, or is it the COVID that's the problem?
Well, it's more the COVID. The bins, I mean, it would take longer, but it's mainly the COVID. And what does occur with the bins and people doing, not intentionally, metal, plastics, you find all kinds of stuff in them. We have a really good participation. They're really good at their paper and the commingled stuff, it's good. So back again, the suggestion would be just put your paper out there.
Well, I don't understand. I mean, I'm not going to beat the horse to death, but if you gave people however many, you got to separate this more, you give them 4 bins. If they commingle stuff, tell your guys don't sort through it, just leave it. You only got to do that once. Next week, it'll be sorted. If people want to recycle, they will separate it if you give them the bins. Tell your guys they don't have to touch it. If it's anything more than plastic bottles in one bin, don't pick it up.
Yeah.
Next week, guess what? It'll be all plastic bottles.
That's an
Well,
option.
it's not our decision to make, but we need to move on. I do want to tell the public one thing, though, and that is that when I told you what I told you in March and April, dozens of you, scores of you, I believed that what I was telling you was true. And when I promised you that the city was going to restore the recycling program as soon as we got our staffing back, I believed it to be true. And to those of you who tried to convince me that the city was going to use this as an excuse to do away with the recycling bin, and I promised you that that was not the case, I promise you that I was not lying to you, that I believed that to be true at the time. So this is not within the council's control. This is a city manager decision, and I just want you to know, as the public, as your acting mayor, that I did not deceive you, that I believed that what I was telling you was the truth when I told it to you. So we should move on because we have other business. So, Mr. Stevenson, item B is discussion regarding the city's 4th of July celebration, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the other items that requires some discussion and direction from council is our 4th of July activities. We have, in the last couple of months, kind of given staff direction to kind of move forward with this event that we hold every single year. Move full force towards getting things organized. Obviously, we didn't anticipate COVID coming into play, and there are certainly certain assumptions that we thought, that this thing wouldn't last as long, so on and so forth. And I'm not convinced that we're not going to have the same problems that we've got for the rest of June, which runs into 1st of July. We have had the ability to meet with Mr. Langfeld, certainly Chief Kemp, and certainly Chief Albano, who run active activities for this event. And looking at the two individually, again, I gave you a handout here this evening to show some pros and cons that we broke out from the aspect of the parade versus the fireworks. And really about the only pro to this whole thing is this would certainly be good for the community's morale. We would certainly love, nobody would love to put this event on more than me, and certainly our staff. If you look at the cons, though, there are several criteria that we look at as inhibiting us from doing this, and certainly things that we need to take into account. I'm sure that council is aware of it, but I'd like to read some of these into the record. As far as the parade, it's going to be difficult to enforce social distancing, which is one of those things that we still have to do. Getting compliance with people wearing face masks when they are within 6 foot of one another is certainly an enforcement problem. One of the whole things that we do at parade activities is throw the elimination, or the idea of throwing out beads and candy and trinkets and whatnot to the crowds. That's certainly something that we would encourage not to be done. We've got a lack of parade participants because people are still afraid of this pandemic, and we are not getting people signed up. I think we've gotten 8 people signed up, and that doesn't mean anything. We traditionally have a bunch of people sign up the last month, but I think that those that have signed up have shown some concern, if you would, with putting a float together and being in the parade. Obviously, it is well known now that Tampa and Brandon have canceled their events, which may, not shall, but may draw a lot bigger crowd to our event because we would be the only one regionally doing a parade or fireworks. And certainly the large crowds is a violation of the CDC requirements. It's still saying, a gathering of no more than 10 people. So those are difficulties in putting together the parade, and certainly that falls through with the fireworks. With a couple additional things is, we've got vendors and children activities that obviously would be canceled. Bounce houses would be one of those things that we wouldn't encourage. Again, we've got some additional crowds because of regional cancellations. And now with the events of this past weekend, we may just entice some protesters because they've now got a large audience. So with those criteria that we had a chance to kind of discuss, last Friday I asked all of us to kind of just think about this and kind of get together on Monday. It's pretty conclusive, and everybody that, all of your staff that's involved with this is pretty much on the same page that we should probably cancel 4th of July parade and fireworks and either reschedule it for another time or move it entirely to next year. So that is the recommendation of our key staff that run this event. And again, I'm open for discussion. I know this is a difficult decision to make because the 4th of July is real important to everybody. So, but again, if we can open up some conversation from council and kind of get council's direction here. We have the ability to, under our current contract with our fireworks vendor, we have 70 days to reschedule an event to shoot off fireworks. That is built into the contract that we have. So I think that if we were to cancel it altogether, we haven't had that conversation with the fireworks vendor, but we can certainly have that conversation. I would imagine that he would be rather receptive to working with us because we're not the only ones in this boat. So I'll stop there.
Mr. Chambers, you have
Yes,
the floor.
that was my question, asking what would happen with the fireworks. Rescheduling to, let's say, Labor Day, you said there'd be no penalty, but we don't know yet about rescheduling for next year.
That is correct.
Okay.
And certainly, we can certainly make that phone call if that is the desire of council. So.
Mrs. Donahue, you have the floor.
I hear the city manager say this is not something for us to decide, but I would like to go home knowing that what you've just said is that we are going to cancel the 4th of July parade, and we are going to postpone the fireworks. I don't want to leave it, you're still thinking about it.
That would be my recommendation
Okay,
as
so-
your city manager. And again, this is a call made by not only city manager, but collectively with our departments that run this thing. I mean, it's just going to be very difficult to pull this off.
I would recommend to the colleagues, and it's a recommendation, but I would think this item would be, it would be wise of us, for us to, somebody to make a motion
I
on this,
agree.
and I'll tell you why. Then it gives Mr. Stevenson, it gives the administration some support that this was a unified decision, and it also records
Yeah.
each of us assenting to that, or whoever dissents from it, if there's any. I think it would be appropriate. I know it's an administrative decision, but something of this nature, I think the council needs to, so just a.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and let me interject something here. You know, we can certainly postpone this until September, but we really don't know what we're going to be dealing with in September either. So I think if in fact, if the direction of council is to postpone it until Labor Day, we should be very well prepared to put another statement out there and qualify it by things are going to have to get a lot better.
Let me slow things down here and make sure everybody's had an opportunity to ask their questions. I don't know if Mr. Sister or Mr. Chilura have any questions. Okay, all right, so.
Okay.
Very well then, is there a motion?
I move to postpone the fireworks until Labor Day, if possible, and to cancel the 4th of July parade for 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Just a word before we move on, Mr. Stevenson, to the public on this also. This is, I know, going to be a very disappointing decision to many of you. It's difficult, it's disappointing to us too, but I concur that I think this is the prudent and the right thing to do. So it's difficult. I know this will be disappointing to many people, but we will put something together as quickly as we can to restore our community events. Mr. Stevenson, I think you are up, no, well, on new business, we're on new business. City Manager's report.
Wait.
Well, I'm sorry, Mrs. Donahue.
We did have several speakers tonight talk to us about changing our ordinance and about.
Oh, I'm
about
sorry, new
hens.
business, we're still on new business,
Yeah,
I'm
we're in new
sorry.
business.
You have
So-
the floor.
So my question is, I mean, I know that they would like for this to happen quickly, and that's not probably doable, because if we said, well, let's waive this for now, I mean, let's face it. Once chickens are here, they're here. So my question would be, how quickly could we move if this body decided to talk about this? And this would not be something we would hash out tonight, obviously. But this is not something that we want to say to our citizens, well, we like it, but it's going to take you a year, okay? My question really is, how quickly could something like this happen? And then I would like for us to have, recommendations, obviously, from staff, from code, from the health department, from all those people who are going to weigh in, because we have talked about this briefly before. And one of the reasons we stopped talking about it was because we found out that the people who already had chickens said, stop bringing it up, because we don't want to do that either. We don't want to have rogue chickens out there. I like what I heard tonight. They had good reasons, but this is not something that we can just all say, yeah, it's a good idea, let's go. As much as I might think is a good idea, there could be somebody who has better information than just my own personal opinion. So I guess my question is to Mrs. Schoen or Mr. Stevenson, what is the process for us to even consider changing this ordinance?
We have so much background and data from previous discussions, you can probably put something together rather quickly.
Okay.
We can certainly mimic Tampa or Hillsborough County's ordinances, if council so desires. I don't know that it would be a lot of work to do that. Again, we've done a lot of research. We've got as many people out there that don't want chickens that do want chickens. And quite honestly, I made it well known, I'm not an advocate of chickens. They become problems and become a nuisance and a regulatory issue for code enforcement. That becomes a nightmare. But if council decides to put something together, we can certainly relax. We've relaxed our sign ordinances, our outdoor seating ordinances because of the pandemic. If council wants to do that, we can certainly put something out there rather quickly. Rewriting the ordinance, you're probably looking at maybe a month or so to kind of bring something back to council. Bees, on the other hand, although it may show up in our ordinance, those are actually regulated by the state. We have very little to say about bees. Any one of us can put a beehive in the backyard. So I don't know that really we can probably modify our code, and I'm not quite sure how the code reads, but we can probably modify that rather easily because we really have no regulatory authority, if you would, with bees. So. I mean, if you want to entertain us putting something together on an ordinance, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Well, I would like to have it on the agenda so that we can get more information about it. I don't mean that you have to bring an ordinance to us. I just want to have this as a discussion. I mean, these people went to a lot of trouble to bring this to us. I mean, my goodness, most people aren't citing code, statutes and what have you, and they did a lot of homework. So I was just asking that this be brought back to us soon for us to investigate.
If I might interject there, Ms. Donahue, not to take the floor, but
it's okay.
In my opinion, it seems difficult in a regular council meeting to make an agenda item just for discussion, other than what we did here with the recycling on the 4th of July, because if we're going to invite public comment, it's got to be on a proposed action. It's got to be on an ordinance or a resolution that we're going to.
Okay.
That would be better, more conducive for a town hall meeting of some type, which of course is very difficult to do right now.
Yeah.
But those are just my thoughts. Now, that's nothing I said can preclude you from making a motion to draft an ordinance for consideration, but I think it might be a little awkward
Well, no, actually,
procedurally.
what you're saying is exactly what I wanted to know. What is the best way for us to proceed so
Well-
that we don't have to go into a full-on ordinance, but
Well,
maybe that's the only way we can do it. So-
Seems to me that under normal circumstances, town hall would be the best way to proceed. Of course, obviously, right now, that's a little
Right.
difficult to do, but you could have a town hall quite easily focused on this topic. We've done it before, we focused on transportation, and we focused on.
Right.
We could do it that way, and really, we have, the only agenda is people get up and talk to us. They tell us 3 minutes at a time what they think.
Yeah.
But it's tough to do that. I mean, I guess maybe you could do it with a call-in, I don't know. I'm not sure, maybe we just have a call-in number and people get in the queue and we sit here and listen to each one at a time, I don't know. But I think it just would be awkward to have it on a regular council meeting as an agenda item, but there's no proposed action, we just want people to come and. On the other hand, if we don't do something, I'm afraid what will happen is we'll get 80 people who want to talk 3 minutes at a time for items not on the agenda, and we'll never get to our
And
agenda.
It is an item that is constantly talked about.
So,
Constant.
how's this? Could you, if this is comfortable with everybody, could you hash this out a little bit, maybe have some discussions with Mr. Barone and Pam and see what can we do some kind of a virtual town hall to give people an opportunity to chime in on this, or, I don't know, I'm just, maybe you could brainstorm this and make some recommendations to us of how to move forward, because I hear what you're saying, there's a lot of people out there on both sides, you're right.
They're on both
And I'm reluctant to start it again, because I remember when it was, I know if we rub the scab off this, it's gonna,
To be quite honest with you, talking about chickens would be great.
well, this is like.
Dealing with the chicken issue would be a
You
lot
mentioned,
better than what we've been
you
doing.
mentioned the sign ordinance. This is like the sign ordinance. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no perfect,
Well,
you know.
there is, and again, we kind of opened things up again with signs, and outdoor seating was the other one that we kind of relaxed those ordinances only for the benefit of businesses.
Yeah, but that's
In
temporary.
our
That's-
community.
chickens
It's
are not temporary.
Chickens are not temporary
Once you
once you
put
bring them
chickens there,
in.
chickens aren't going away.
right.
So,
So the sign thing, we all understand that's going
Yeah.
away eventually, hopefully, but.
Yeah.
And I've had to deal with chickens before, I've said this before, and it's a difficult call to get when a neighbor says, my next door neighbor's chickens are becoming a nuisance and defecating all over my driveway and my car and everything else, and, you want to pin these things up, and then you have a problem with rodents. It is a difficult subject to have. I understand the concept of having eggs available to everybody, that's certainly, but sometimes it just doesn't fit in an urban setting.
I hear you. I know this is.
It's a tough call, but answer your question, Mr. Mayor, we can certainly do some research, and we can certainly do some brainstorming to figure out how we get this vetted out in the community. I'm not quite sure how we would do that, because I think if you hold a town hall, you're going to get 50 people to say, yeah, great idea, and you're going to get 50 people
Well,
to say.
that's what happened last time.
Not
Yeah.
a good idea.
I
And,
know.
unless you have a consensus on something like this, you're opening up code enforcement for a bunch of regulations that is difficult, to say the least, so.
How about we think about this a little more until the next meeting? Is that okay with you?
That's fine. That's
Is that
fine.
okay with
Yeah.
everybody if we just kind of think this over?
Yeah,
a
we
little
can,
bit?
we can kind of put together,
Well, let's all
outline of-
just think about this a little bit. How's that? Okay.
All right.
City manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can ask Chief Albano to come up to the podium, please. I think, in light of recent events happening last Friday at 1:30, and certainly the work that our police department, through the leadership of Mr. Albano, dealt with Saturday night, Sunday night, even up until Monday night. We still have a lot of stuff going on around town. I tried to share with you guys some of the information that we've got. There's stuff going on in Riverview There's stuff going on in Plant City this evening. I just wanted to actually commend Ken and his police department for the stuff that they've been doing. It is, certainly Friday afternoon was something that was an eye-awakening to everybody. The chief and I had a chance to sit down yesterday, just the two of us, and talk about security and talk about his personnel and, you know, getting some counseling for people that need it. But I just wanted to personally recognize Chief for, I know that he's trying to get a good night's sleep, just like the rest of us for the last few nights. So I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you from me. And thank you, I know that council can certainly weigh in with whatever they want to say, but personally from me to you, thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a tough week for our police department, much less our city. So I'll stop with that.
I'll do this.
Yeah, love that. There you go.
Thank you for that. I mean, the guys really worked hard. It was a very unfortunate situation on Friday, followed by a protest that got out of everybody's wildest dreams of what it would have turned out to be and how it evolved and moved into Tampa. But we're on top of things. We got a great group of men and women that wear this uniform, and they're proud to serve, and they did a phenomenal job on Friday and Saturday. And we have an attachment in Plant City right now, helping our neighbors who responded and helped us on Saturday. And that's what we do. We take care of one another. We take care of each other's cities, and we just try to persevere whatever comes up against us. So we had a lot of support too. I mean, I've stayed in contact with the fire department as it grew. If we had needed the assistance of the fire department, Ian had his people aware of what was going on. So our dispatchers worked hard as well. So thank you, and I will certainly pass it on to the men and women of the police department of your appreciation. So thank you. And thank all of you.
Thank you.
You did.
I needed to get that out. You've done a tremendous job under some very tremendous circumstances.
That's all. City Attorney's report.
I'll make this very short. A few months ago, we all had a workshop concerning alternative methods to be used with code enforcement. We discussed taking some of these more difficult and cases that have hung on for quite some time and using an alternative method of going to municipal ordinance violation process with the court. We have now done that with one case. It is scheduled to be heard before the judge July 22nd. And this is not something where we've bypassed our code enforcement board. This has been to code enforcement board and has gone on for quite some time. Involves possible life safety issue because it's a swimming pool. Although there's a fence around it, sometimes the gate is left open, so that could present a problem. So we've been working, Ernie Mueller and I have been working with Tom Baroni and his staff to put this case together. And we'll see how it goes and if possibly this is a way to get any improvement in this particular situation.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Schoen? At the end of, conclude your report?
That's it.
Very good. Is there any other business to come before the council tonight? Any other business to come before the council tonight? If not, we're adjourned.